Welcome back to this UNSC Halo 3 Marine cosplay build, making it all out of 3D printed parts. Well, most of it out of 3D printed stuff. There's going to be non-3D printed things. Anyway, I'm Jason, the creator of the Tabletop Battlefield. Now, back in episode 1, we built this 3D printed flexible leg armor here. And in episode 2 here, I'm going to work on building the little clip that hangs up here in the belt that then attaches via a strap to this thigh armor piece to hold it in place. Now, just like in the first episode, what we need to do before we get to the modeling process is to kind of interpret our reference images and figure out how we're going to build this piece. So let's jump over to the sketch pad. Let's take a look now at designing this piece of the Halo Marine costume. And what you've got is you've got the belt strap kind of coming across here. And this clip thing sits up here somewhere. It's got a little bit of a trapezoidal shape to it. And then with some other mechanism, it actually then attaches to another strap here, which is going to go down to the hip armor that we made in the previous video, right? Now, let's start figuring out a few dimensions. In the previous video, I decided that the strap that holds up the hip armor, that's going to be 1 inch wide, but I didn't really give a whole lot of justification for why that is. Based on these reference images, what I can tell is that the main belt strap here appears to be twice as wide as the one holding up the thigh armor. Now, conveniently, nylon webbing comes in several sizes, including 2 inches and 1 inch, and that's why I chose the 1 inch here to hold the thigh armor up, because the piece that's holding up the belt appears to be about twice the thickness of the one actually holding up the thigh armor. Now, like I said here, this clip is a bit of a trapezoidal shape, and the strapping is going to pass through it. And I'm going to be building this thing in 3 pieces to, 1, capture detail, but 2, more importantly, avoid hard to remove support material. And we'll see more about that in just a little bit. Now, when it comes to actually holding up the armor with this nylon strapping here, I'm not going to rely on a 3D printed piece because load bearing and 3D printed stuff can be a little dicey. So I've got some steel U-bolts here. These are 1/4 inch diameter. They're 1 inch apart from inside to inside, and then from the bottom here to the inside of the top, they're 1 3/4 of an inch. And this is going to be the actual piece and that holds the nylon strapping, because it's going to be a lot stronger and not going to risk of having the 3D printed parts snap under the weight of the movement, all that fun stuff. So I have to not only have the nylon webbing for the belt go through the piece, but then I also got to have a room for this particular U-bolt to fit in as well. All right, so here's how we're going to approach this. What I do know is I know this is 2 inches, this piece of nylon strapping acting as a belt. That's a given. And this whole mechanism here looks to be just a little bit larger than the belt. And it's actually got so a little trapezoidal top, and then there is some sort of a semicircular piece in the bottom, and what appears to be a bit of a latching situation going on here, as well as there is some sort of detail. I'm looking at a different reference image than the one that I started with in this episode because I found a different one online. It's got a little bit more detail, but there's pretty much some sort of like detail to this armor piece that's like that. And then these 2 latching pieces are raised up. I don't know. We can maybe make it 1/4 of an inch. Yeah, probably 1/4 of an inch above the main belt clip area. All right, so now let's start assigning some dimensions. We know from here to here, from about here to about almost all the way down to here, this is about 2 inches, because this is where the nylon strapping is going to go through. I need to have a little bit of material either side to support the nylon strapping, so we'll put 1/8 of an inch down here and 1/8 of an inch up here. Actually, no. I can do, trying to think, yeah, I think I get away with 1/8 of an inch. Because this doesn't really support a whole lot of weight, and it's going to be a pretty large piece too. So we're going to have 1/8 of an inch extra at the top and at the bottom. Now, this piece looks to be a little bit narrower than it is tall. So if this whole thing, let's say, is 2 1/4 inches tall, even though I drew it pretty fat here. I would say this in itself is maybe, let's do shoot for 1.75 inches, because I do got to factor in the U-bolt. And the U-bolt itself, then we're going to have a center point here. And I know that a 1/2 inch over, so if we go over 1/2 inch, there's going to be a 1/4 inch bolt. Now the thing about a 3D printing, when you make a hole in 3D printing, it isn't the exact size you think it is. It's usually a little bit smaller. So I'm going to actually make these holes for the bolt to go into are going to be 5/16 of an inch thick. So 1/16 inch thicker than they actually are, and that'll give me a little bit of extra room to insert the bolt, which means, let me do some math here, at 0.5 inches, which that's 8/16 plus 5. So we're right now at 13/16 of an inch. So 2 of those, oh, plus we probably want an 1/8 of inch of material, so 15/16 inch of material from this point to the end point here. If we have 2 of those, then we're looking at 1 7/8. So actually, this has got to be a little bit longer than 1.75 inches. So this is actually going to be a little bit just under 2 inches wide. We'll do 1.78 inches. That's not what I meant. 1 7/8 inches. The joys of fractions versus decimals, people. Oh, goodness. Okay. And then our U-bolt's going to be down here, doing its thing, whatever. And then what I do know is I'm kind of curious how long it is from the end of the threaded area to the bottom, outside of the bottom of the U-bolt. Let me measure that. That is about 1 inch. Okay. So wherever our bottom piece is, I'm scribbling a whole bunch of stuff down here because this is actually, you're seeing my thinking process. I'll refine this in a moment. But I know from the bottom here is 1 inch. So I'm going to make it 1 1/8 of an inch for whatever this half disc part and other end of the latch is going to be. All right. Shall we try to redraw this and make it just a little bit clearer over the side here? And roughly-ish, you know, whatever we want to make it. So the top here, let's make it 1.5 inches at the top section. And then I know I've got a 1/8 inch thick piece right here, and this is going to act as a guide to help hold, not help hold in, to actually hold in the nylon strapping. Then I have a, we'll do it a 2.2 inch gap, and this is where the nylon strapping is actually going to go. And then at this point here, this bottom piece, this is going to end up being the 1 7/8 of an inch. Yeah, so this bottom piece is going to be 1 7/8 of an inch. So you're going to end up with this trapezoidal thing here. I think this should be enough material, hopefully. I'm drawing it a little bit too big, and I'm using a real scale thing. So 1 7/8 of an inch is like that and like that. So I think I might run into a bit of a problem. Because you always could run into a problem where the bolt doesn't fit all the way in, but if that's the case, I'll just saw these things off with a hacksaw. So this will be 1 7/8 of an inch at the bottom here. It's going to be a little bit further down then, because this is going to be a 1/8 inch barrier then to help hold in the nylon strapping. Then it looks like I've got about a 1/4 inch piece that's going to serve as visually the bottom of the latch, because ideally this thing looks to be like it's 2 pieces latched together, because, like, you know, you're strapping on the armor and latching it in place. So there's going to be another 1/4 inch right here, and then I'm going to have a half circle piece that's going to sit on top of this U-bolt to cover it up, and that's going to have a 1 inch radius to it, and it's just going to be like that. And then on the detail piece up here is going to be another 1/4 inch piece. And then I'll just do some fancy little design plates to glue down here to get this little curve design effect that we got going on. All right. Let's take a look at the side view. You kind of see why I'm making this in multiple pieces to avoid support material. So here we go. Here's our view from the side. Right here, this would be, think of it, this would be your waist right here. Head would be up there. Legs would be down here. So here's the piece, this clamp, or this clamp, latch, clip, whatever you want to call it, that's sitting up against your body. Here's the bottom of it. Now, it's going to be a 1/8 inch base plate, just bare minimum. And then these two channels here and here rise up from this base plate then to give a small area or to contain the nylon strapping. So they're each 1/8 of an inch tall, and the nylon strapping would sit in between here. I could very easily go ahead and then build this next part right, as part of the same piece here. But two things are going to happen. One, there's going to be holes in here to support the U-bolts, which means you're going to have support material in here where the nylon strap is going to go, and you're going to have support material in here where the bolts go. And those are two areas where it's going to be very, very difficult to remove the support material. So what I'm going to end up doing is print this little U-shaped thing here in one piece, and then print this part here, which holds the bolts in one piece. Now, how tall is this going to be? Well, that's a good question. We know that these holes here for the U-bolts are 5/16 inch diameter, and I think if I were to make a 1/8 inch buffer, top and bottom, that would be enough material to add enough strength to hold it all together. And 1/8 of an inch is 2/16 of an inch, so we have 2/16 top and bottom. Add that together, you're looking at 9/16 of an inch for this next piece. And now, since there's going to be a hole in the middle here to avoid support material, what I'll do is I will print it on the print bed such that the holes for the U-bolts are at the top. Therefore, when it's printed layer by layer, there's no need for support material because there's nothing above the holes. And then finally, we have the layer up here that's going to be for all this detail, which I know that there's going to be a 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch piece here that's like the top half of the latch. And then we have another piece right here. I'll probably just model in a little bit of a divot right in here to kind of give the illusion they're two separate pieces. But I know this is also a 1/4 inch here, and this is a 1/4 inch tall. Yeah, I'll make that a 1/4 inch tall. That'll look all right. So it's going to be a 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch. Freaking going between freaking fractions, freaking decimals. Okay. And then back here, we're going to have these small little plates. These are the curved plates. They'll probably be 1/16 inch thick. There's going to be a detail I glue onto the piece. And then on this side here, since it's all going to be printed flat on the print bed, I will be able to have this, this here is going to end up being this semicircular piece that's covering the U-bolt and make it look like it's a single fully completed clip, and that this U-bolt is not there as a cheat mechanism to hold the whole thing together. All right, and that is a 1 inch diameter thing. And I think with all that, I know it's probably a lot of scatterbrain thinking because in my head it makes sense, but I'm just kind of working through the process. And you can see how I went from a rough idea to narrowing down dimensions to then breaking it down into the 3 main pieces and how I can orient them that way to avoid support material. Let's jump over to Blender and start the modeling process. We're back in Blender 2.8. Now to give you a quick primer once again on the interface, you can go back to the first episode for that, but hold down the middle mouse button to rotate around. Then you can do shift and the middle mouse button to kind of drag around a little bit. The numpad keys, if your keyboard's got them, for 7 is top view, 3 inside is front and side view, and then 5 is how you turn on or off orthographic view, where orthographic view is where basically there's no depth perception, no perspective when you look at things further off in the distance. I personally like that for modeling, but that's my preference. All right, so the first thing we're going to have to do, also, if you just move the mouse wheel in and out, you can zoom in and out. Let's get rid of both the lamp and the camera here, because those are 3D modeling and 3D animation things, and we don't really need to worry about that. So left click like on the camera, press X, and then the delete thing pops up, and then click delete. I'm going to jump to the modeling layout up here to make your life a little bit easier. And then let's get back into orthographic view. And I'll actually use the cube this time. So first things first, let's bring in our reference images. So Shift A, don't leave the box, Shift A, choose my clip. I just scanned in the sketch that I just made. Now I can't build directly on top of it, but this is a fairly simple piece, so I'm just going to do the modeling. So let's left click on our default cube here. I'm actually going to move it away from the image. And for now, I'm going to assume that each one of these big grid sections is 1 inch. That's not correct technically, but for now it'll work. So I know I need a 1.5 inch top section, so I press Tab to go into edit mode. And a lot of the details here of how you select things, I'm going to kind of skip over that because that was something I did in the first episode. Do a box select scale for S, about 1.5 inches. And then the bottom needs to be 1 7/8 of an inch wide. That's probably close enough. And then I'm going to go to the side view here. We'll go to object mode, so tab to get out of edit mode to object mode, and then S for scale, Z for Z-axis, and 1/8 of an inch. What is that? That would be 0.1 to 1.5 units high, so I'm a little tall right now. Something like that. That's about 1/8 of an inch tall. That's good enough. You don't have to be exact for this thing, just close enough, right? And now this top half of the piece, which ends here, is 2.2 and then 1/8, 1/8. So let me do this first. It's 2.2, so let me just pull it down like that. So there's 2.2 inches, because we have 2 inches, and then 2 extra units right below it. And then I need to add on 1/8 of an inch on the top and the bottom. So left click outside the object to deselect any vertices. Let's do B for box select. Select the top 2 here. Press E for extrude. This is where you take the face and just kind of drag it out a little bit. Oh, you have to resize things. But anyway, extrude. And then I need to go up about 1/8 of an inch to like that. And then I'm going to come down here and do the same thing at the bottom. So left click outside the object to deselect everything. B, box select, select the bottom 2 vertices, even though we are actually selecting the entire face right there. Extrude, and we'll move it down about 1.25 of these little boxes. Now what I need to do is kind of resize things, right? Because the very top is what is 1.5 inches tall, and the very bottom is what's supposed to be the 1 7/8 inch tall. Okay, I'm just going to cheat to make life easier. Let's just scale this guy like that so that the lines are more or less parallel. So technically the top is a little bit smaller than 1.5 inches, and the bottom is going to be a little bit wider, but you know. Select outside. Box, select those, scale, press X, and then just kind of scale it to where it's close enough. So now it looks like you got a nice smooth line top to bottom. It's not perfect, but no one's going to notice, right? Okay, so this part here that we just modeled is this bottom part right here, and it goes until basically right there. So this top half thing is what we modeled. Now if you notice in the side view, you've got these 2 things sticking up here. We have to model those, so let me slide over to one of the side views, and let's click on our object again, go back into edit mode. And what you need to do is select these 2 guys and these 2 guys and extrude them both up. But you'll notice if you try to select both of them at the same time, you've selected everything, and if you extrude up, the whole thing goes up, which you don't want to do. So you have a couple options here. We'll do the cheat method because we want these 2 things to be exact. So let's click outside. Let's box select everything. And then I'm going to teach you a new command that we'll worry about the details of it later. Do Shift K. No, don't do Shift K. Damn it, that was a Blender 2.79 command. What's a knife cut in Blender 2.8? Go to Mesh and choose Bisect. And then what we can do, nothing fancy here, I just got to draw a line. And draw this line just somewhere through the middle of the mesh. There we go. And then I don't even care what this little doohickey thing that shows up. Now there's a vertex right here. I can do a box select over here and a box select over here. And what that doesn't do is it doesn't select this vertex in the middle. So when I extrude, we won't have any trouble with extruding the whole thing. It'll just extrude the two end pieces. So press E for extrude. And then Z locks it along the Z-axis if it's not already doing so. In fact, if it doesn't automatically lock you to the Z-axis right now, something is wrong with your select. Click out of it, Control Z, and do it again. And do the whole box select again. So let's raise this thing up about 1.25 units. And as I pan around, you're going to see now we've got these extra little ledge pieces sitting up here. And that's perfect. That's what I want to see. Okay. Of course, this is a beta software, so be sure to save periodically. Next things next is that I need to build the top part of this piece where the bolt goes through. And what I should have done is actually do some duplication beforehand, but I'll do it now. In object mode, so you press tab to get out of edit mode to object mode, select our piece here. Let's do Shift D and then press Z so we can drag it up. Just like that. So I have two copies of it, and what I need to do now is actually get rid of these vertices I just added. So let's press X and choose vertices. And now if I press Z to bring up what view type I want to use and go to solid, what you're going to notice is we've got a few holes in here. It might be a little tricky to notice, but where the areas we just deleted, there's no longer a face covering it up. So we need to select, hold down Shift, and do multiple selects of each of those four vertices. And let's see if a Blender 2.7 command works. It does. Press F, and that'll fill that hole in. There's some mathematical details of what's going on there, but for this purpose, don't worry about it. Select those four vertices, press F, and we're good to go. Now back in side view, so this is, I think I'm using 3 on the numpad for this. Let's go back to wireframe, left click outside the thing to deselect all the vertices. I want to select the whole top row there. And now this part here, what I say, it was 9/16 inch tall, which means it's about, I don't know, maybe about 6 of these little squares tall. So press G so we can move all the vertices. Z locks in the Z axis. And let's go up 6 squares. So let's click outside to deselect everything. Press tab to return to object mode. Now I need to create the pieces that are going to actually cut the holes out in this object. So Shift A, let's add a cylinder. Under Mesh, go to Cylinder. And down here in the lower left hand corner, let's click on the little box. And the radius, we want this to be 5/16 divided by 2. So it's math time. 5 divided by 16, divide that by 2, because the diameter is 5/16, but radius would be half that. So let's go 0.156. And then if we go to our side view, I need to rotate this so that it is basically 90 degrees from where it is now. So just press R and just drag it a little bit. And what you're going to notice is the X rotation changed from 0 to wherever you stopped at. Left click there, enter 90, and that'll complete the rotation. So I'm back in top view, press G to grab the object, and what I want to do is move it such that its right-hand side is aligned with any one of the major grid axes. Because we know there is 1 inch between the two prongs of our U-bolt, so there's going to be one major grid axis between the two pieces of our 3D object. So now, with this guy still selected, press Shift D and then X, and that's going to allow us to move a new copy of the object away, and we want to put it the other side, so we want to put its left side 1 inch away, or 1 unit away from the other one. Then, therefore now there's a 1 inch gap between these two pieces. Hold down Shift and left click to select the other guy. Press Control J, and that'll make them into a single object. And we need to press G and grab it and move them up here. Now this is where things get a little tricky, because like I said, this piece is probably a little... So what I want to do first, let's take make sure we have the top one selected. This guy here. I am going to press G and press Y and move it so it's lined up with this red line here. That would be the x-axis. Now, ideally, these two things want to go 1 inch into that piece. I don't think that's the case, but let's press G, go Y. You'd be cutting it very, very close. So you can see here, it works, but there's not a lot of room here for 3D printed material. I think it'll be all right, because now that I think about it, there still needs to be an extra 1/4 inch of material down here that can cover up the bolts. So what I can do is, let's just bring this back down like that. Let's put them right about there, and then I'll rely on, hopefully, this extra detail that goes in the top layer to cover up the bottom of the bolts. Now we need to do the detail layer. So that's going to require me to build a few more pieces. So we're going to add a new square. Let's do Shift A, Mesh, Cube. And the size, let's make it be, oh, I don't know. Let's make it be 0.25. Actually, it should be 0.5 to be honest with you. Watch. Oh, I need to do some Boolean operations, don't I? Well, I'll do that in a moment. This piece here is going to end up becoming the latch. So what I need to do, it's a the whole latch is a 1/2 inch, but a 1/4 inch will sit on the top, this top piece, and a 1/4 inch will kind of hang off the bottom, helping cover up the U-bolt. Alright, so I'm going to go into edit mode here. So you press Tab, press A to select everything, right click, and you're going to choose Subdivide. And then what I can do, go back out of edit mode, go back to object mode with Tab. Let's grab Y and move the little orange center dot to be aligned with the bottom of this bottom piece here, which is along the red x-axis. Then I'm going to grab it and move along the x-axis to more or less it's approximating the middle. It doesn't have to be perfect. Let's go back into edit mode. Left click outside the box. Do a box select around this side of the mesh. Let's do a grab and bring it over here like that. Then left click, box select, grab, bring it over here. And then left click, let's box select the top, do scale along the x-axis, and I want to make these lines here more or less line up with the piece below it. Okay, so now what I've got here is this piece represents the two latches on the model. And then what I want to do is make it so there does appear to be a little bit of a visible break right here, as if there's two pieces that got clipped together. So for that, let's go and make something very simple. Let me go to the side view. Now we have this little subdivide piece right here. So I'm going to press A, select everything. So I'm going to press Control R. This is going to do a special type of cut. You'll see this little yellow line dance around. You want to make the yellow line appear first in the left half, left click, and then bring it very, very close to the middle of the object, very close to the blue line where that's the z-axis. and then press A once again, Control R, and now you want the yellow line to be on the right side of the piece. And then after you click, you can drag that line and make it very close to the middle. Eventually, if you zoom into the middle of your latch piece here, what you've got is got 3 vertices really close together. So let's just do a box select around the middle one, press G and then Z and pull it down. And what that's going to do is effectively create the illusion that there is a little bit of a gap there, as if the 2 pieces were merged together. All right, now we got to make this piece be the right height. Let's grab Z. We're going to line it along one of these axes. Go back in the tab into edit mode, do a box select, and then grab along the Z axis and just pull it down a bit. 1/4 inch tall, so that's 2.5 of these little boxes. So something like that is going to look pretty good right there. So I'm going to just drag this guy up, and that's going to more or less sit up there for the final latch. So the last thing I need to do is build these 2 little curved fancy things up here, and then the mesh that covers up the U-bolt down here. So let's start with the mesh that covers up the U-bolt. Add a new cylinder, because what I want to do is radius 1 vertices do like 128. That'll make it look a bit more of like a smooth object. So let's go into edit mode here. Let's hit Z, choose wireframe, and I want to chop off most of these vertices, at least the top half of them anyway. So you can see the middle point is going to be where this orange dot is. So let's select, with a box select, all the vertices that are above the orange dot. So bring your box select down to just above the orange dot. Don't go below it. And what that does is it selects all the vertices on top. Press X to delete them. And now all we got left is this weird kind of half semi-cylinder thing. We'll fix this up. Let's go into a front or side view. Box select the top. Press F. What you just did there was you just covered the top up because you see the bottom is still open. So let's go back to a side view, go back to wireframe, left click to get rid of all the vertices selected, box select the bottom, press F, now you got a bottom down there. Then let's go back to a top view, left click to deselect everything, and do a box select just only on the very top vertices up there. So what you notice, you have this empty face now selected, press F to fill that in, and we've now got a solid object. Last thing I want to do is press A to select everything, and let me see now, does Control N, oh fudgers. Once again, they changed more keyboard commands on me. Right, so Shift N is now. Okay, there we go. That may or may not have done anything, but sometimes when you do some weird face creation like that, it creates a mathematical situation where it works in 3D space, but not in real space. So Shift N basically fixes this kind of mathematical situation, but don't worry too much about that. All right, so now I need to make it really thin. So let's left click on it. Go back into edit mode. I guess you could just stay out in an object mode and do scale Z. And then I'll make it pretty thin, like down to 1/8 of an inch. So maybe 1.2 of these little boxes high, like that. And then I'm going to move it up here into place. Keep zooming in more and more, and then let's just put it like that. Looks pretty good there. All right, so I need to scale it a bit. So let's scale it along the x-axis so that this thing can actually fit up against this piece, because we need basically the width of this piece to match the width of the piece next to it. Let's do some wireframe work. All right, that's looking pretty good. Let's tab mode back into edit mode here. Do a box select at the very top. I'm going to extrude it in here. This is just for when slicer time comes around. It can see, it'll be able to interpret those 2 separate objects as one piece. And what I think I might even do do a box select of everything below here. Let's grab and move along the y-axis just to give me a little bit of extra wiggle room for covering up the U-bolt. So that looks pretty good like that. And then last is just kind of make a little bit of some sort of curve thing, you know, on the top up here. This is the box is going to become the U-bolt holder. Let Shift duplicate it, grab it up and move up to the Z, scale it along the Z axis now so that it's about 1.25 boxes tall. Oh, a little bit more. And then we'll put it like that. That works pretty good. Let's go back into edit mode, select everything, right click, choose subdivide, box select all the vertices over here. Whoa, that is cool. Check that sucker out. This is like a super box select. So all I'm doing apparently is I hold down the left mouse button and I can draw out like a path that's letting me select vertices. That's definitely new in 2.8. Okay, that was cool. All right, so I just selected all those outside vertices. And then press X to choose delete vertices. And then let's select everything down the middle here. It's okay, this is a little bit clunky. Yeah, so anyway, box select. Press F to fill that face in. Then I am going to grab X and move it just a little bit in this direction. So pull it a little bit away from the center orange dot there. Let's press right click, choose subdivide. And that'll be good enough for this purpose. So left click, deselect everything. What I'm going to start doing is selecting a chunk of the vertices. Right now I'm selecting all things at the top, but you'll see in a moment I'm only going to select one at a time. Press grab X, and I'm going to move it all the way over here. And weird things are going to start happening, but we'll fix that here in a moment. So then box select this guy and grab it like this. And what you want to do is kind of align these vertices from being straight into something that's kind of like a bit of a curve. If I tab out of object mode, something terrible looks to be happening, right? Because what is happening right now is you've got one of those mathematical situations where an object sort of exists in reality or in mathematical space, but there's no way this could exist in like a real world situation because of the way all this crap is going on. So how am I going to fix this? So from object mode here, to fix this problem, what I'm going to do is go to edit mode, and I want to select face select. So up here, you can see there's a couple different options next to edit mode. Select the one that looks like the big white square. This is going to be face select mode. I want to click on the face that's causing the trouble. In that case, I click there, and this whole face is something weird because it's pretty much a situation where you've got a geometry that can't actually exist in the real world. So let's press X to delete, but choose faces. Do not choose vertices or edges, just choose faces. And what I've done now is I've left the vertices in place, but if I go to Z solid, you can see it's now open. I need to patch that back up, but I can rebuild the face in a way that I know it'll work in reality. So let's go back to vertex mode. And then I'm just going to start selecting some vertices with the box select. Press F to build a face there, deselect. And then now from this point on, select two sets of vertices. So the two that you just ended the face with and the next two in line, press F. And then repeat this process. And neat trick here, you can do a box select, but if you use the middle mouse button, it does a deselect. So you can see I'm just selecting one set of vertices after the other, and then I'm pressing F. Deselect, select, F. Select face, deselect, select, face, deselect, and so on. And now, let's see if all my weird little hackery actually did what it's supposed to. Deselect everything. Select from the little menu up here. Choose select all by trait and then non-manifold. And if you don't see anything selected, that's victory. All right. So this piece here is ready to 3D print. Well, to be safe, select everything. Do Shift-N, that normal magic I talked about earlier. And then let's do Shift-D for duplicate back in object mode. X to go ahead and drag it away. Now, the Control, fudgers. There we go. Okay. So you do Control M and then X. That's going to mirror it along the X axis, and then grab X, and then we can align it up along this piece just like that. So now you can see here, if I go to X solid, we've got that weird little curve shape that we see in the on the gaming model. And now the last things I need to do for the modeling process is take these pieces that represent the U-bolt and cut them out of the U-bolt container. So let's look to the side here. Grab Z, pull them up like that. And that's about where I think I'm going to have it. I'm going to put it pretty close to the top. So what I think I can do is I can actually remove some of this material down here. Let's give this guy a nice name. So where is that at? Right here. So click on this little box on the right hand side. Looks like a little square inside for a little reticle thing. And let's call this U-bolt. And then I want to select our U-bolt body. Let's name that as well while we're at it. U-bolt body. And then for the U-bolt body, let's go to the modifiers tab. That's the wrench. Choose Boolean. Operation is going to be difference, and target object is going to be U-bolt, and then hit apply, and that looks like that worked. So I am going to take our U-bolt here, and let's just drag it out of the way. Let's go view in the solid mode. That's Z, then choose solid, and it looks like that's good to go. To be safe, let's select our U-bolt holder, go to edit mode, and once again, let's go up here, choose select, select all by trait, non-manifold, nothing selected, so that's a victory. Then what I want to do is let's do a box select on the bottom here and grab along the Z-axis, and let's make this a little bit smaller. So I can make that piece thinner now, and I think that should be good. So let's get ready to start 3D printing things. So now down here's our tray. Here's our U-bolt holder. Let's grab by the Z-axis to move it away. And then I can do a box select and select our top detail pieces and do Control up. And then I got to left click something. Let's click that one there. And then a Control J to join them all together as one object. And let's call this guy details. So we're just about ready to start the 3D printing process. What I need to do is scale them all up, because once again I've been working kind of in Blender units and assuming that one Blender unit is 1 inch, which isn't correct. It's actually a case of one Blender unit is 1 millimeter. So I got to scale each of these guys up by 25.4 times because there's 25.4 millimeters in 1 inch. All right, so first the tray. Under scale over here, if this window is not visible, you press N to toggle it. I might just pull it up randomly. And then for X, enter in 25.4, Y 25.4, Z 25.4. You're gonna get something much, much bigger, which is fine. Left click on the next object, and we're going to do the same thing. What the heck? Why is this? Uh-oh, hold on. You know what? Okay, so I did some scaling on the object. So the z-axis is not 1, but it's 0.056. So let me go ahead and do 0.056 times 25.4. We want to enter in 1.42 for the z-axis. And let me think here now. If I do the math right. 1, 2, 3. Yep. Okay. So yeah. So because I did some scaling on the object in the first place, I want to basically multiply each of the values in the scale x, scale y, and scale z by 25.4. So not simply enter the value 25.4, do the math. Now for x and y, they're already 1, so we can enter in 25.4. But when we get to the z value, since it's at 0.056, we need to multiply 25.4 by 0.056, and you get 1.42. So 3D modeling has a bit of a, not a bit, but has a lot of math component to it. So if you don't want to do math, and maybe 3D modeling is not the best option for you to work with, but okay, here we go. This is a -1, so let's do minus 25.4. I don't know why it's minus, but probably because of the mirroring process. And then I've got a 0.009, so I need to multiply 0.009 by 25.4. So change that to a 0.2286. 0.2286. And I can do a little bit of a checksum here, because I know that this piece should be 6 millimeters tall, which is about 6 of these cubes tall, and that's good. Okay, so there's our 3 final pieces for the clip. Let's export each of them. So you do File, Export, STL. And I'm in the thigh belt clip. Be sure to choose selection only. Let's call this clip tray. Here we are inside of Cura. Let's bring in our objects here. 3D models, thigh belt clip. Bring in each one of these. And that looks about right. Huh, I wonder why that's all red. So that's a little odd. That shouldn't be the case. You know what I bet the problem is? Let me jump back to Blender here. Remember that normal magic thing I've been doing? I didn't do it when I joined all the objects together. So let's hit Tab, press A to select everything, Shift N to do some normal magic, Shift out, save, and let's re-export this guy back out as details. Let's go back into Cura, and if we press F5, it'll reload the model, and there we go, that weird red thing goes away, so all the faces are correct for 3D printing. Someday maybe I'll explain the math that's going on there, but for now, it's just basically we've got a proper object. Okay, I need to make sure I swap all, for me, I got to swap this all over to Filament 2. That's where my PLA is sitting right now. And now to avoid any sort of support material, this piece is ready to go. This piece here, though, if I were to print it just like this, there's going to be some support material I wanted to fill in those bolt holes. So I'm going to take it, we're going to rotate it in 90 degrees like that, so it's sitting straight up, and that'll get rid of that support material. And then this piece is fine as well in terms of support material. Let's see, I've got this all cranked up like I would expect. I'm just curious, how long would one of these things take to print? Oh, only about 2 hours. That's awesome. All right, so that is it for the 3D modeling portion of the belt clip for the Halo Marine. Let's get this guy printed up, and then I will assemble him. 3D printing parts for the belt clip here are done. Now this is a take two, I'll be honest with you. I kind of botched up the assembly order the first time and I kind of ripped a few things apart. But for the assembly process, I'm going to be using some gel super glue. I do find with 3D printed stuff, the gel type glue works a lot better than the thin glue. My thought process is being that it has to do with the layer lines and the small spaces between them, but I'm not entirely sure. Also, I've got some epoxy here for securing the U-bolt into the U-bolt's holder piece. Now, what comes to this particular type of epoxy, I was at a sci-fi convention this weekend, so this stuff spent about 6 hours in my car in temperatures approaching 0 degrees Fahrenheit, which, I don't know, that's like -10, -15 degrees Celsius, somewhere in that range. So hopefully it still works, but we'll find out in a few minutes. First things first is that you're going to want to insert the U-bolt into the U-bolt holder. That's the first thing you want to glue down, and so you're going to put epoxy on the bolt and pour some epoxy also in the two holes and insert the bolt in there. Now, I discovered I screwed up a little bit when I did the test fitting, and that I didn't actually put the holes in the right spot. They're a tiny bit too wide. But if you do just pull with a lot of strength on the U-bolt, you can actually bend it out where it's just enough to compensate for the fact that I screwed up the measurements right there. All right, let's measure some epoxy and then get that part started. And then, well, jam the U-bolt in there and just ignore the fact that, you know, you have to kind of shove it in because I botched the measuring up. That will work. Let's clean off excess epoxy. There will come a time where we want to put epoxy all over this thing, but that's not right at the moment. Because at some point we'll be coating this whole thing in XTC 3D, which is the type of epoxy. But for now, that'll work. Just set that stuff off to the side, and let's move on to using the super glue. Now I'm going to take the tray. This is the piece that kind of holds the belt up against the U-bolt block over here. So there's the two little raised pieces that kind of act as guides for the belt. I want to run some super glue along each of those two raised guides. And then very carefully we want to take this piece and line it up with the U-bolt holder. Probably should settle itself out in like 30-60 seconds. Here's the detail part. We want to be able to glue this down to the top so that it kind of hides the U-bolt and gives the whole thing the appearance of some sort of locking mechanism or some sort of, I guess, latch or clamp, whatever you need, a buckle clamp, whatever you want to call it. So I'm just going to run some super glue along the outside of the top of the U-bolt holder here. Once again, excess epoxy, but that's fine. And let's just stick this piece down. And we can let this go for a while, and our first belt clip will be complete. Well, assembled anyway. Cool, there we go. That looks pretty darn close to the reference images I was seeing for the Marine. I'm quite happy with it. Well, there you go. That's the first of the belt clip complete. We're going to print up a second one of these and assemble it, but of course I'll do that off camera. And then next time, I'm going to start figuring out how to get the whole belt itself attached, as well as some of the loops to hold the thigh armor on. So after video 3, you're going to start seeing pieces of this costume actually come together. So thank you guys all for watching. Once again, I'm Jason, the creator of the Tabletop Battlefield. Be sure to subscribe here on YouTube to get the latest episodes in this Learning Blender 2.8 for Cosplay series. They're nice, long, really in-depth tutorials if you've just somehow skipped to the end of the video. I don't know why I'm doing all the promotion now. But regardless, hit that subscribe button here on YouTube to get the latest notifications about when these videos come out. They kind of come in mixed with between the miniature stuff, micro flash, and all that fun things. So thank you guys all for watching. Have a good night, good morning, whatever time it is. For me, it's about the time to head out to see the lunar eclipse. At least the very beginning of it. I think it just began about 15 minutes ago. So now you know what day I'm filming this video on. Thank you guys all for watching.